You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
It's Sam, Mike and Don again on the podcast. And I'm Sam and you're Mike, aren't you? Say hello.
Hello, John.
And a man who had bird flu. You think I'm joking?
Parrot fever.
Well,
That'll
parrot
do.
is a bird.
Yeah.
Had bird flu this time last week. I went down to see him in hospital and I honestly thought he was on his way out. I actually feared for his life. He's made a recovery. We've moved him to 8 different hospitals under 8 different specialists. And he's here with us and he's bird flu Don. Don Scott.
White lady funerals were following you around, you know. They thought they had a customer.
Give us an update, Don. How did you get it?
I thought I got it off Bernie Quinlan.
What, Don?
You heard.
Okay. Is he a bird?
Well, I'd call him something, but we're on air. So I got the, I think I got it initially off him, and then they diagnosed me with parrot fever. They didn't know what I had.
9 days in hospital?
Yeah, a long time,
Wow.
Michael.
Don, you didn't get off Bernie Quinlan. You said you got it from feeding the birds.
Oh, well, that's what they told me, but...
Oh, the doctors?
What would
They wouldn't know, no.
Well,
What
they
did you
didn't
tell
know.
them?
They didn't know for a long time anyway.
Okay, so you're up and about and you're here?
Yep. Now listen.
Sammy,
Whoa. I got a call from Rex Hunt.
Yeah.
You blokes, hang on. Are you blokes trying to replace Rex Hunt? Is he taking my spot because he rang up and apologised and said...
He takes my spot. If he takes your spot, you can have my spot because I won't be here.
Well, I listened to that podcast. I didn't realise you had a bit of female in you. You really spat the dummy that day.
That's sexist,
theatre.
Don.
Yeah,
We're
I don't care what it
we're all
is.
just one breed of people.
I don't
these
care
days.
what
We're
it
not
is. It's
females
gone
or
crazy.
males.
So I've behaved
We're
like
people.
a girl.
Yes.
Jack's got good legs. What else would you like to say to get
And
your
John's a control freak.
That's fair enough. That's
Well,
not
anyhow,
sexist.
this is all very fascinating to a man sitting just offside, off camera, off microphone, because we've asked him to come in. Now, I'm going to have a crack at this. I know you'll interrupt me, but I'll just start
Why?
off this. This man is an Australian thoroughbred racehorse trainer. He's trained nearly 100 Group 1 winners. Tell me if any of this is in it.
That's incorrect. 94.
I said nearly 100.
Oh, well, that's
You said
7
nearly
off.
101.
7 off.
I said he's
Move on.
Come on, hurry up.
trained and won nearly 100.
Come on.
Come on.
What?
Don't look around. Just do the introduction.
Nearly 100
Okay.
Group 1
Oh.
winners. Including the big four, which are
Big Four.
The Big Four.
How would I know?
Melbourne Cup.
Yep. Caulfield
Cox-
Cup, Cox Plate,
and
Golden
the-
Slipper.
Well done, Mick. He is the youngest horse trainer ever to be inducted into the Australian Racing Hall of Fame.
And he's deceptively
He's-
6'2".
he
He's
is.
trained over 4,000 winners, or nearly.
No, it's another nearly, I reckon. Anyways, introduce
Come
him.
on.
I'm about to, and he is Mr. David Haynes.
Great to have you here, David. Did you say Haynes?
Haynes, I'm Mr. David Hayes.
Jeez,
No, that's
better.
another racing personality.
Yeah,
How am I
Now, David.
going? David, that is a very bad error to introduce someone and then get the name wrong. David Hayes, I know you're David Hayes. Who is David Haynes? He's another.
I wish I had his money.
Yeah, Kingston Town.
Kingston
David.
Town, he was
Yeah.
a
son. That's right.
He
I
was
know
the
his
first
son.
David to bring European horses across, wasn't he? Or
One of my father was as
Was
well.
it really?
But David Haynes was a leading owner in Australia for decades, and Kingston Town was his flagship. But
he bred
a super owner and a very nice man.
Well, I'm
and he
embar-
bred a horse, Johnny. And he bred a horse that sold for $1 million at the yearling sales. That held the record for quite a while.
Which
a big
one?
chestnut horse.
Yeah, it was. I don't think it was much good. I think
No,
it was
it
called
didn't- no good.
See the Stars or something. But it was the.
No, you think you've paint the stars?
It might have been.
That was the one that Robert Holmes at court bought for $850,000, and it couldn't beat you.
No, it was slow.
George
very slow.
Hanlon trained it, I think.
I'm embarrassed that I am really embarrassed.
Don't worry,
No, I
Sam.
hate doing that, mate, because that's just so stupid. David Hayes. I want to ask, the first question I want to ask David
Yes.
Hayes is, do you slaughter your horses when they're no good to you?
No, what happens, we rehome our horses, and then what we do is we sell them in bloodstock
You've taken that seriously,
auctions. It's like a second-hand or third-hand car. We sell them when there's miles in the clock. They either go breeding, they either go racing in weaker jurisdictions. But then what happens in 2 or 3 down the line, they're out of our control. But I think they've put just recently.
What did you make of all that?
I didn't like it.
Why,
Was it a
David?
hit job?
I think it was. One thing I didn't like was they sat on the story for 2 years.
You sure that's right?
That's the Mail.
6 months, I heard.
Well,
Which doesn't make me right.
A day is too long. If someone's mistreating an animal, like they were on that show clearly, something should have been done straight away if you're a true animal lover. If any of us knew, I think anyone here, if your dog was getting kicked around like that, you'd do something about it, wouldn't you?
Have they
But
got
those
any?
people, David, are desensitised now. It's been going on since Adam was a boy. I mean, we had killers' yards, doggers' yards around where I used to live, and they're different people. And who would go? I couldn't do it, but these people, I won't say,
That's hardly
but
the
they
point.
are desensitized.
Desensitised, but that's
Thank
hardly
you.
the point, Donald.
Listen, John, when you go in there, an animal's an animal, and they are. I know it's not the point, but that's what you're dealing with.
But David is saying, as we all are, I don't see anything wrong with slaughtering horses eventually if that's the end of the line for them. But to have those people doing that on camera is disgraceful. Whether you're an animal lover or not, that is just so being. That is.
I,
it happens
I
with
think if you
cattle?
go to any abattoir, there's no nice way to kill a cow and there's no nice way to kill a sheep.
But there must be a better way, David.
I think there's a more humane way to do it,
That
but there's no
means it's a
pleasant
better
way.
David. There is a better way. You put a shot through their brain. That just kills
Yeah,
them
but he put
immediately.
5 through the poor horse, John.
Well, how about a bigger one? Just one big one that kills it immediately.
Anyway.
Could you not inject them, David? Could you not euthanize
Yeah,
them?
if they're injected, it's not. There's no. The animal is wasted. The
Oh,
meat
is that
can't be
right?
passed on for dogs or whatever they want to feed them to. So it's a wicked waste to inject them. But to kill them in a more humane way than we saw on television the other day, I'm sure, and treat them. It was the treatment of them before they were euthanised.
So what about your sport, David? Is there a fair amount of corruption that the general public don't know about, either in the way they're bred, they're raced, they're drugged, they're topped up to make them run better, the people, the authorities, or is it
I think,
not
Sam,
known?
probably we're at a historical low at the moment when you go through the Cobalt saga, all up the Aquanita top-up saga, the milkshaking, into the animal cruelty
and Darren Weir.
and the Darren Weir setup. But you're hearing about it. The thing I get as a competitor in it, quite a bit of comfort, is that 20 years ago, I'm sure it was all going on, but they weren't getting caught.
Exactly.
And now, it's very easy to declare correct weight and everything's rosy when it's ugly underneath. I think the compliance in racing is better than it's ever been, and they're catching them. But it's still, Sam, to answer your question, there's for big money competitions, people are taking shortcuts. It's a matter of they're getting better at catching them.
So what about the perception that Melbourne Cup horse winners that come from overseas and are here for a minute, and the first time you ever see them run is in the Melbourne Cup, and you never know what's been done to them overseas? Is there enough policing of that going on, or is that just we don't want to downgrade the event?
No, Sam, I think it's, they're tested like crazy. The weather, I think the biggest factor for the imports coming in is that they get an English summer on their back. They compete at the distance they're running over 2 or 3 times, where the Australian horses come out of winter and they're building up. I had a lot of luck with Criterion coming back, who competed over there, and it woke me up. He came through like an English horse, trained by an Australian, nearly won the Melbourne Cup, won the Caulfield Stakes, ran second to Winks, would have won 9 out of 10. And I thought, gee, that allowed that horse, that travelling, he went up a level.
Isn't it funny though, David, the perception growing among us now is that our stayers are no good. From a mile up, that we can't compete. We're competing against middle-range horses from Europe, and they just smash us.
Well, it's fact, they are at the moment. But I suppose the horse that did run second in the Cox Plate was an Australian breed.
The 3-year-old.
He ran well, and Winks has dominated them for the last 4 years. So our very best, like in athletics, can compete, but the sheer weighted numbers and class if we have an Olympics in Melbourne, a lot of our good athletes get flogged.
I want to ask you one more political one, then I think we can move on to...
No, I've got
Yeah,
I've
I
got a
want to
couple.
ask you one more. David, when there was announced that you were going to Hong Kong, you said, and this is the quote, "It's one of the best training positions in the world. It's a level playing field." What did you mean by that?
Well, but it's very well policed because you all train under one roof. And if you get caught doing the wrong thing in Hong Kong, you just get sacked. And it'd be highly unlikely, not impossible, but if you get caught in your stable with anything that's not supplied or registered by the Hong Kong Jockey Club, you're out. And it's a zero tolerance.
But the implication is that it's not a level playing field here.
Well, if you
Well,
read
for
the
that
papers
very
for the
reason.
last, you know that it's been pretty poor read. It's been a case of the cycling, hasn't it? It's been a big Lance Armstrong moment, I think. But cycling's gone on from it, and I'm sure racing will, and they're getting better at policing it. But when you get beaten in Hong Kong, you wake up the next day and go, well, he was too good for me. Sometimes when we were getting beaten here, you think, if the rumours are right, effing cheat.
Now, go ahead, Donald.
Okay, now I've got a thing about the hypocrisy of, that fellow up in New South Wales, the racing authorities, David. Now, I think it's cruel, and they govern racing, to race 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds that are not fully matured. Their knees don't come together until they're 4. The vertebrae on their back don't come together until they're 5, and their withers, you see a young horse, it just hasn't come up. Now, why are authorities putting on 2- and 3-year-old races? That is cruel.
Look, I don't think it's cruel. It is cruel if you run them and they're not ready. They're like children. Some mature quickly, others take forever. The long, lanky types like you guys probably take a bit longer than the short, blocky ones like mine.
David.
But I do think in part your statement is correct that if there wasn't so much treasure to be got by running a young horse, I don't say it's cruel, you would have better horses at 4 and 5 if they weren't able to have the pressure to push in the big races.
Exploited.
It's slightly exploited. If a horse is mature, they're fine to run.
Your father, Colin, had Proud Miss, didn't he?
No, that was Bart.
Was it? Okay.
He had a horse called Desirable.
Yeah, that won a Lightning Stakes.
Yes.
Yeah. Proud Miss ran, I reckon, 10 times as a 2-year-old.
Yeah, she was an early maturer, and I think it makes no difference. You can play plenty of footy if you're an early maturer too, can't you?
Tim Watson, yeah.
Fair enough. In order to be as good as... I know nothing about racing, incidentally, David, but it doesn't stop me asking questions. In order to be as good as you are, do you have to be a horse whisperer? Do you have to actually have do you have to get into the psyche of a horse? Or what makes you so good?
Look, I think trainers... It's a bit like if someone asked me to draw you, it wouldn't look anything like you. He's a talented artist. They can just do it without training. They can look at you and paint you. I think training is a little bit like more of an art than a science. And you I can see in a horse, like a lot of trainers, that horse needs more work. That horse has had enough. And just because they don't talk, but they send you messages, and so you look at things. And I see horses like a lot of good horsemen, and have a better idea what to do than say you. But an artist, it's like being an artist. I think some people can draw pictures and others can't.
So you would know about Don, of course. Don is a very keen horse man, or horse person.
I could tell that by his statement earlier.
Mate, he's Don, you're a show jumper and an equestrian, and his whole life has been horses. So you have a good one-on-one relationship with your horses, don't you?
Yeah, but it's a bit different
I've
to
seen you
David
down
because
there. I know
David's
that.
got 1,000 horses to train now. I've only got 2, so I can get a little bit closer than what he can, and
He goes
work them
all
out.
over the country jumping.
And it is quite
equestrian.
true with equestrian that these horses to do the equestrian to turn and jump and change directions like they have to, they're much better suited 4, 5 and 6, and they reach their peak at 10, don't they?
Oh yeah, they can come at 8, 10.
So
When
We have a rarity like Fields of Omar occasionally comes through at 10 or Blackheart Bart.
So last year in America, United States, There were over 500 fatalities, horses died on the track racing. How I know it's a bigger population.
No, they race on a surface.
And that's the problem, is it?
The surface they race on is dirt.
Yep.
And in Australia, the figures would be, a 15th of that. Like you rarely see.
You don't see.
Yeah, but you rarely see that happen.
So
but
why so, David?
Santa Anita in California,
35 this year.
in Australia, compared to how many in America?
No, it's Santa Anita.
Santa Anita, it's the surface they're galloping on. It shifts and skids.
So
At speed, that the leg moves further than the horse.
So is there a
ready
reasonable
for it.
argument from the activists to say it should be banned?
There's a case to it, but luckily we're in Australia and
Yes.
it's not like that. We race on turf, and when we race on the artificial surfaces, they're very safe.
Can I ask David a couple of questions? David, I've been watching the
We're going
jockeys.
to anyway.
Well, I am.
You don't have
but
to ask-
get in with you two
You don't
is
have to
very,
ask
very
permission,
difficult.
Donald, you just
Well, I
do it.
do, because you're the control freak. David, jockeys.
Thank you, Don.
They ride short. Why don't they ride longer? Now, from an aerodynamic viewpoint, they're getting up high on the horse.
Aerodynamic, Donald?
That's the word.
Thank you, Johnny.
Well, I was only helping you.
They're up very high on the horse, so they've got to catch the wind down the back. They sit on the horse's back coming up the home straight, and when they're riding a horse out, they get below the horse's head. Now, why don't they ride a bit longer so they become a little lower, especially around the back?
Well, they did used to do that in the 1900s, and then there was a fellow called Lester Piggott worked out that he rode extraordinarily short. He started successful riding short, which started the trend that we are now. And the belief is that if they can distribute the weight more forwardly and evenly over the shoulder, it copes better and they go faster.
Yeah, but
and they win more often.
Yeah, I agree. But cross country, in our game, you get up over the horse's shoulder too, but you don't ride as short as what a jockey does. And the other thing is the control. I've watched the races since I've been sick, and a lot of horses are veering since I've been sick.
Oh.
And a lot of horses coming up the straight are either moving left or right. The jockey uses his whip. Now, if he had longer legs, he'd be able to control the horse. And that comes into another thing. How well educated are these race horses that they're veering to the left or right, coming in or out when they're coming down the home straight?
It's a pressure thing because they're at their top, and they tend to, if they would go straight as an arrow if they're running at half or three-quarter pace. At full pace, they can run off the line a little bit. But that brings into another question that's topical at the moment, is the whip. And if you ask any of the jockeys, because they ride so short and they want to get their balance up over the wither, they need the whip to straighten it, to straighten the horse with the reins.
Yeah, but
now, if you barred the whip, there could be a case of riding long like the old straight backs did, because I would encourage, if there was no whip, I would be encouraging my riders to ride longer and heel the boot into their stomach and straighten them like you do when you're on a dressage horse.
Now, a lot of horses, again...
It's going all right, Don.
I just want
to be quiet
you've
for a
lapsed
moment.
into esoteric talk, which means we have no idea what you're
No,
talking
I
about,
know
which is
that.
good, but well done.
Now, what about watching again? A lot of these horses are coming down the outside and they're balanced, and the jockey's not even using the whip. And he's sitting perfectly straight and still on the horse. Now, when they're using the whip, they've got to lose their balance. But I've watched a lot of jockeys, and the horse has got a full head of steam up, coming down the outside or coming through, and he's just sitting there guiding it, riding hands and heels.
Yeah, that's true. There are horses that don't need the whip. They quite often don't use it. But then at different times, they do need the whip. And I call it the persuader. I think the whip's a bad word, or the encourager. But I think it's an aid. I think the whip rule could be tinkered with, but I don't think they should get rid of the whip.
Can I ask
It's not only here, but it's
he's going
also...
to ride for a bloke who doesn't get any time.
It's not only here, but
You know what esoteric means?
Will you shut up? It's not only here, but it's over in England too, and they have the 3 mile steeplechases. Now those horses, I think this is cruel, that those horses have given their all over the steeples for 3 miles, and they're gone. I could run faster than what they do coming.
They're legless, mate.
They are. And 20 metres after the crossing the line, they're in a walk. Now those jockeys sit back, don't get off the horse's back, and use the whip. Now this is in England. And that is shocking to see.
Yeah, luckily that doesn't happen in Australia.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen at the Grand Annual?
Well, you don't see horses in the Grand Annual, but when they're beaten, they pull them out of the race now. They don't jump the last hurdle when they can't run
Which is great.
Now, I want to take you back to your other
finished,
great...
Don?
Yeah.
This
No,
stage?
I haven't, because he's a horseman. I can talk to him for hours.
No, I'm enjoying
he's-
it, but just take a breath. Mick's going to
Yes.
go on to a
Well, I
different...
just want to ask David about his other great sporting love,
Exactly.
which is footy. Now, when we stood up before, David, you were surprised at how short these two Leviathan figures from our past were. You're 6'2". You played some footy. Were you any good at it?
I played in a premiership like TAC Cup side.
For Centrals?
Played with John Platten's era around that play. He was probably the best around, and Richard Cousins. And then I played a year in the reserves as a 20-year-old. And the South Australian comp in those days was a lot stronger than it is now, because it was not AFL, it was VFL in those days. And I got retired in my as a 20-year-old by my father because he had ill health and he thought I lacked a bit.
Lacked a
bit of what?
Yeah.
Well, in those days, you couldn't watch it on TV, and he couldn't watch. He had to be at the races to watch the races because, like Don's been watching a lot of races, you couldn't do
Since
it. You had
he's
to
been
go
sick.
to watch it, and they had big crowds at the races. But this day didn't have any runners, and I've been talking my ability up a little bit to him over through the journey.
In deference to Mick's question, it's a bit like Winks and Black Caviar. It's not the size of the dog in the fight; it's the size of the fight in the dog.
He's about to get this answer.
a question and you come
Yeah.
in.
Come on, David, pick it up.
So what he did, he went and saw me play, and we played Port Adelaide on Adelaide Oval, and I was a natural wingman, but was playing centre-half forward that day, and we all know a very hard position in a losing side to play. And I had a very quiet day at the office. The team got flogged, and Dad, driving home with me, said, that was interesting. Like the only time he'd seen me after me talking myself up a bit. And he said, well, what do we tell our owners if they're Melbourne class? And I said, oh, really good. And, how lucky you are to have a good horse. What do we tell them if they're Adelaide class? And I said, that's barely good enough, but if it keeps going in the right direction, it could end up in Melbourne. What do we tell them if they're country class? Oh, you should sell them. He said, well, you give up and start working with me.
I do apologise for interrupting. I haven't recovered from calling you David Haynes for a start, so I do apologise.
But you were a good athlete as well. Now, what did you compete in as an athlete?
I ran in the state 400 relay.
Shit.
And for South Australia, not Victoria. And I was third in the national triple jump, and I was a state long jumper.
As a junior or a senior?
As a junior and senior.
Really?
So what could you run a 400 in?
48.6.
Did you really? Wow. You're
If
faster than some of your horses.
If you had a daughter, would you like her to compete in athletics against a transgender man who's signalled as a woman?
I have got a daughter. She ran for Victoria in the cross country, but I would prefer her to run against her own sex.
Exactly, of course, naturally.
That's a simplistic conclusion to the argument, though. What do you do, David? What would you say to someone who is genuinely transgender?
Race in their own competition.
But they would say...
Because they're not male, they're not purely a male or purely a female. Put them all in together and race each other.
So have a category of their own?
Yes, have their own division.
Okay.
Well done.
Correct. They're biologically only two sexes. Doesn't matter how you massage it, top and tail it, discuss it, dissect it. There are two biological sexes on this planet.
Okay. Right. Now, excuse me, Don, you can get back to this. Your son, Will, I know how much passion you've got for footy via him. You and I spoke, or the family and I spoke on open mic early this year. At that time, what?
Yeah, extraordinarily good.
It is, isn't it?
And the one with Dave.
You saw the one with David, did you?
Of course I did.
Did you really?
I'd never miss any of them.
Who else was
Because I
on?
never watch any of them. No, that's not right. You know that's bullshit.
Now, David, at that time, I thought you were just only hopeful that Will might get an opportunity. In fact, in the end, he played 9 games in a pretty good team.
Yeah, we did it before the season, and you were talking us into doing it. And I thought, wait till he plays a game and then we do it. But your point was the journey of Wills
Correct.
to get there. So it was a bonus that he I think there were 10 new players in the side this year and 3 got a game, and Will was one of them who played 9.
So
is Will the captain coach or was captain coach of Euroa?
No, that's his identical twin brother, JD. So he played a couple of seasons in the VFL and was captain.
Who, JD?
JD, yes.
Right, and he's now captain coach of Euroa still?
He stood down, but he made the state country Victorian side this year. He's a good player, but he just didn't want to commit to go to AFL.
Okay, so I want to ask you this question. You've got so many horses that have won and been competitive in huge races. What's it like watching a horse in $1 million+ race and watching your son play footy? The emotional ride.
I would say most of them, I would say it was harder work, the football. But I reckon the Melbourne Cup this year, because it's my last one, and I've got the favourite, might be right up there with Will's first game, I think.
I'm very sorry for this ignorant question. You say it's your last one, so you've decided.
Well, I'm going to Hong Kong to train.
I beg your pardon. I told you I know nothing about racing, but I'm very interested in you, David. Don't worry about that.
I appreciate that, Samuel.
Now, Don, have you got another
I have got
question
another.
you could bamboozle Mick and I with?
Okay, now get ready. I collect bits.
What?
Bits.
Horse bits.
Thank you.
Yes,
David.
yes.
Bits.
Okay, well, explain to the
Well,
layman.
he knows what I'm talking
Well,
about.
what about us?
Okay,
John?
horse bits.
Okay.
Now, I've got one,
Bits.
and I asked a racing guy what
that
it's
a
for.
coin?
I've never used it. And he said it was
Bitcoin?
developed by your father. Is that true, the ring bit?
The ring bit, yes, it was.
Now, tell me about the ring bit, because he couldn't give me an explanation as to why. I've seen a couple of horses with it in their mouths.
With
racing.
ring bits.
Ring bit, they're the most popular bit to race in because they give the jockey more control. When a horse loses, when a rider, as you'd appreciate, on a horse changing direction, you can pull the bit through the mouth.
That's right.
Then you lose control. A ring bit, it's impossible to do. It keeps it in the right place.
So why the
Don.
ring? Why couldn't you put bars?
Extraordinary.
Why
No,
couldn't
they're
you
good
put
questions.
bars on the side? Wouldn't
You
that?
can put bars on the side, but it's still possible to pull a bar through.
Wow.
If it's badly, like if a horse changes direction.
So it's
at
only
pace.
used for direction,
Direction.
not to get the tongue over the bit. You've got to use a tongue grid or something.
They'll still get the tongue over the bit with a ring bit, but the jockeys like it because they feel they can hold them better with it, and if they do start angling off, like you said earlier, they can't pull the bit through their mouth.
This is Don. I didn't know how long it would take for us to broach the subject of directional ring bits that are pulled over the tongue when there's bars.
Yeah, but I'm dealing with two idiots here. You and Sheahan.
Oh, you are. Don.
Sheehan now, is it?
Michael.
No,
better.
Don.
Well,
you
I
are.
didn't even refer to him by name, so at least you got your name.
You are dealing with idiots, and it's enlightening to listen to this chat
No, it's
between
not.
two horse people. It is. Go in any more?
Yes.
Oh no.
No, I
was only
won't. I
joking.
won't. No.
Hey, David, let's
I wasn't
broaden this a
joking.
fraction.
Go on.
I'm passionate right at this minute about water rights in this country, and they would affect you, particularly from your South Australian days.
And he's got a farm at Euroa.
And you've got a farm at Euroa.
And he's got a
What-
farm at Euroa.
What is going on with the most precious commodity in this country? And we've got the Murray River and the Darling River, which are now just tracks that are devoid of water.
Yeah, well, I think the obviously the lack of rain hasn't helped,
No.
but I'm sure that the farms and the farmers that got lovely money for selling their water rights would love to have them now, wouldn't they? You know, if you had a farm on a river, it used to be your right to
Yes.
pump out of.
But
Now,
how can they commercialise water?
I'm not the full quid on it, except that all your bores are metered now. If you can pump out of a creek, but only it's all metered how much you can take out, and you have to have a license to be able to pump it out.
You see Q&A last night?
No, I didn't.
You should watch it if you get a chance.
no,
I know
it's
it's a
big
busy.
station.
Do you know
The
the
ABC.
biggest?
Yeah.
Do you know the biggest single seller of water rights in Victoria is Eddie Maguire?
Do you know that to be true?
Well, that's what I was told by
Eddie
a farmer.
Maguire's selling water rights, is he?
Well, water rights were sold,
I know.
and smart businessmen picked them up and now make money out of them by selling the water to the multinationals.
Well, that'd be Eddie if he's.
But it shouldn't happen, David, should it?
Well, my brother-in-law's like Eddie has been doing it. He was smart enough to get onto it, and he's made himself lots of money. But
Wow.
that was a loophole or an opportunity that was there that's probably done to death now. But basically, you sell it when it's not raining, and when it's raining, you buy it.
The
It's
most
pretty
valuable
simple.
thing in the world, David, including
Besides
oil,
anything, yep.
gold, silver, is arable land next to running water.
Yeah,
The most valuable thing in the world.
and what a lovely place to sit and watch it too. It's very
Well, if
peaceful.
you can anymore.
Now, could I draw, you'll love this, Donald, could I draw a segue between football and racing? What did you make of the Essendon drugs saga? No, just a minute. If the horse industry is trying to get the best out of horses by supplements and maybe pushing the envelope, what did you make of the debacle of the AFL handling the Essendon saga, or did you have an opinion on it? Well, even if you didn't have an opinion on it, we want you to have an opinion on it.
Look, Sam, obviously the whole thing was very disappointing. One, that they were pushing the limits the way they were, and maybe because the AFL didn't have the practice and with this situation, with hindsight, they might have handled it a bit differently. But
Might have consulted the racing industry and asked them what they would have done to
well, the racing industry
investigate it.
certainly had more practice at
Yes.
it. But even with the cobalt, there were things that the racing industry would have done differently with the benefit of a run at it, because the AFL clearly weren't ready for a drug saga, were they?
Do you think the Essendon is guilty of breaking the rules?
I don't know enough about it to comment really, but they clearly were. So
Clearly, we're what?
breaking the rules,
Were they?
as far as I've read it.
See, Sam doesn't agree with that.
No, there's
Injecting boys in this.
but injecting them with what? It's not a good look. It's not.
No, I just if it
it's
was
not a
happening
good
to my boy,
Yeah.
I wouldn't like it much,
Yeah.
especially when it's a concoction that no one really knows what it is except the bloke giving it.
No, that's
And-
exactly
That's
right.
the most accurate appraisal of what we've seen,
No,
Sam.
that's exactly, David, what you say is 100% right. But they were never found guilty of doing anything illegal. It was just supposition. And I understand if it was my son, or if it was me, I would go down and be injected with anything. If the club said, go ahead. This is
You
good.
would.
Well, I
If
feel
you
for-
were playing for Hawthorn, Donald.
No.
and If Alan Jeans said,
No.
hang on, you haven't finished the question. If they said, could you go down to a surgery here? We've got a supplement which will make you feel better or make you whatever. You would be the first there.
run for longer.
Because you would take it on face value that the club knew what they were doing. You wouldn't.
I think an 18-year-old, I agree with you, Sam.
Yeah.
I think an 18, 19-year-old, if the club champion's doing it and he sees him go in the medical room, come out and had an injection of Go Fast or Stamina, you'd be wanting to do it because you want to be like the club champion.
Yep.
I really think that it should not have happened.
Donald, do you make a distinction between the painkillers that got you back on the field via injection and what happened at Essendon?
Listen, I trained and I was on the verge. I couldn't do any more. 1 year I trained 13 sessions a week and couldn't get any more out of my body. And I can understand athletes then requiring help. And so I can appreciate
What, illegal help?
illegal help. I trained in a gym in Camberwell and they were on steroids there, so you could have got them.
Well, hey, what, footballers?
Yeah.
Were on
Were they?
steroids.
Were they?
Yeah. We had
the
a player.
pla-
We had a player on steroids.
We at Hawthorn.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Charlie Grummage.
Charlie Grummage.
Yes.
Didn't
1
do-
year.
Didn't do much for him.
No, for 1 year he blew up. But David, getting back to the rehousing of the horses.
listening to this.
Well, I've told
one,
Charlie.
No, you did tell Charlie. I know that.
David, getting back to the horses, the 1% of your prize money. Do you question where that's going with regard to the rehousing of these racehorses? Because it's coming out of your prize money. And also, what do you think of the $25 million that Racing Victoria are putting forward now for so-called rehoming?
Well, they were putting about 8, I understand, before it. So it's not as much as 25.
what?
8 million towards it.
Where's the money going, mate?
Look, a few of the trainers were asking that exact same question. all I know now is the one good thing out of this horrible 7:30 report, it's given a bit of a shake-up, and I think the funds have been well controlled where they're going now.
Well, I've got a
Rehoming.
thoroughbred at the moment training it. I haven't got anything for it.
No, you won't. But then what will happen is, as I understand it, is if you have no, it's run its race and you've got nowhere to go with it, you can ring, and it's a thoroughbred, you can ring Racing Victoria and they'll take it over for you. They'll make a decision whether it's rehomeable or it needs to be humanely euthanased. And if there's a one central body euthanasing horses correctly, I think that'll solve. It's a pretty simple solution.
Is someone like Darren Weir on his own, or has he just been caught?
I think he's been caught. I'm sure there's other unscrupulous people that haven't been caught, but I don't think they'll be doing it now.
David, your Father's Day, Colin, as a kid, this is my memory of it, maybe wrong, with Colin and Bart and Tommy Smith, would they have used jiggers?
Not to my knowledge, but there were, over the years, you would hear rumours of them being used. But if you're caught using a jigger, you're out for a long time.
And rightly so.
And rightly so. So don't do it. And if you do it, you're out. And I think now, in this light, you should get life.
So
Wow.
Don,
Jiggers have been used for years, and other trainers have been caught using jiggers.
So Don, you might not want to discuss this, but you've discussed it with me away from this forum about show jumping and how that is not corrupt, but that is some very doubtful practices.
Oh, it is corrupt. Don't you worry about that.
Very by putting putting.
Well, okay. Well, in the Olympic
explain
Games,
that, please.
Okay. In the now, listen, horse people. Question mark. They will do anything to win. Now, in our game, they will rub liniment on the horses. They'll use special boots and tighten them up on their legs. I've seen the horses bleed, and they'll still go out and jump.
So
now, in the
the
Olympics, they've now got to a point that no one's allowed to touch that horse once it comes out of the ring. It goes and stands on a mat, and the boots are removed because people used to put tacks in those boots.
So they'd lift their hoofs up to get
No,
over
lift
the jump.
their legs up. No, when they hit the rail, the
yes.
tack had come in, and so the next time they would bang. They'd sharpen the horse up in the practice ring. Now, I've been to places where I've seen barbed wire wrapped around poles, and I have seen the plastic matting, that clear plastic matting with the nipples on it, nailed onto poles, so the nipples are standing out. And these are show
Sounds
jump.
like someone owed
David,
you once.
yeah, David, you can't believe this, can you?
No, I didn't realise. And that's so they lift their legs, and if they
Well,
don't, they cut
if
their
they hit a
legs.
rail, we don't want them because the rails are light, the cups are now shallow. They used to be big and heavy and you could whack them, but the competition's become such now that it is so competitive. Now, this is what they'll stoop to. Even in the Olympic Games at Seoul, they were going down to a forest and sharpening their horses up before the event, sharpening them up. Now, there's many ways of sharpening a horse.
What do you mean? Can you explain that to me?
Well, he'll pick his legs up. He will not touch the fence when he goes in
He'll
the
jump
ring.
over because if he thinks he's going to hit it, he'll rip it open.
Why do you have to go to a forest to do that?
Well, because it's
Don't get
illegal
caught.
what they're doing.
Okay, all right.
And out of mind,
Naive
out of sight.
question. It's a naive question. David,
Of course it was.
is the Everest going to overtake the Caulfield Cup as the premier racing event in Australia?
Or Melbourne Cup.
No, in terms of isn't the Everest run the same day?
Yeah, it's run on the same
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
Look, they're two different races. One,
I understand that, but
for me, I'm a bit of a traditionalist. If you said to me, would you rather win the Caulfield Cup or the Everest on the same day, I'd still go for the Caulfield Cup, funnily enough, because it leads into the Melbourne Cup.
yeah, but that's practical. I'm talking about the romance and the money.
The romance is the Caulfield Cup. The money is the Everest.
Yes, but the Everest had a great field, and
Very good field.
Yeah,
very good
Because they
field.
go where the money is.
But
Yes, correct.
it's
Yeah.
a different race. You
They're
can't
buying
just enter in
success.
it. You
No,
have to be invited
I
in or
understand
be a
that.
slot holder.
Yeah.
So while it has restrictions like that, it's not a pure race.
and doesn't deserve Group 1 status?
I think it does because the standard, but
Even though it's restricted.
but it's restricted, but the best horses end up in it. So by the rating of the race, it's a Group 1 race, don't worry about that. But Moonee Valley are vetoing it because everyone has to agree it's a Group 1 race. Moonee Valley will never agree it's a Group 1 race if it's the week before their Group 1s.
Yeah.
David, can I compliment you? Now, your horses are very well conformed. Do you buy them or do you have an agent looking?
I do the final call on them, but I have people help me buy as well. Because there's just so many to look at and you just physically can't get around.
So do you think confirmation comes into play because it just consistently, I look at your horses in the ring, especially the Melbourne horses, not the ones in the country, but the Melbourne horses are just athletes that look so well coordinated and they're well conformed.
Well, thank you, but I think a lot of stables, if you get to a Saturday, they're normally the best horses anyway.
Yeah, but yours are consistently. I'm paying you. I watch because I'm looking for a
show
decent
horse.
thorough. Yeah, exactly right. A show jumper, and yours are consistently good.
I buy to the CS Haynes model, what he liked, and then he taught me, and I've taught my sons what we look for.
So, what do you look for?
A lengthy horse with a good.
What do you mean, neck or back?
Tail. Head to tail,
this down the
length,
next time I'm
and depth of hip.
Trying to pick up
And
somebody.
a good bar.
Will you
Sorry,
shut up? I'm
speaking
trying
to
to
Mick. I
learn.
was speaking
I'm
to
trying to
Mick.
learn off somebody
I'm
over
trying
here.
to learn how to pick up people at bars. What, long in the neck? What's that, Don? I'm writing this down.
Oh, you spoke over the top of us once again, so I missed it all. Thank you very
Go
much.
ahead.
No.
No, go ahead, please. Go on.
Well,
You
while
glossed
you're thinking of
over.
it-
You glossed over. I think that's very serious and
What?
serious thing that you said about the equestrian and how corrupt that is
Yeah,
and
well,
how
we've done
cruel
that.
that is.
Yeah.
We did that.
Well, the thoroughbred racing or the gallop seems to be where all the chat's about. No one ever mentions
That's
that about
exactly
That's
right.
Now, David, you've got how many horses in work at
Why don't you
Flemington?
write an op-ed
We've
about
got,
it?
50 and work at Flemington,
50. Okay, and at Euroa?
200,
Okay. Now, I've got 2 with you.
yes.
Are you aware of that?
Yeah. Well, one I think is ready to win its next start, so we won't.
Yes,
wreck the
I'm
odds.
happy. I'm happy to tell everyone that Fiorente's girl will win at Pakenham on Oaks Day.
I think it will.
Good. Now, are you across? I mean, you send us messages about how the horse is going. How can you be across that many horses and the quality of their work?
So what happens when they're when you say there's 200 in training, there's probably 80 that are in early training under my care. So they go through a system where I don't have a lot to do with that 80. I see them, they go past me every day, but it's basically a routine up until 6 weeks. It varies if you're a skinny horse or a heavy horse. You increase the work, you decrease the work. But that's a division of my business that they work towards building up to me. Once they're in at the fast stage, galloping stage and nominating, I don't think it's that hard. You just sort of with them every day and you're around them, and I've got great support, great team of people that watch with me, and you just get used to it.
Now, unless you two boys have got anything else horse chat to ask David Hayes about, ask it now because we're going to
I'd
bid
just
him.
like to know why partnerships are coming in vogue in racing now, because everybody seems to have a partner now.
It's expensive, Donald.
Why is that,
I
David?
think that's a very good question. In my dad's era, if there were partnerships, Dad and I would have trained, and Dad might have trained for a few more years. In my dad's era, when no one had partners, they raced Wednesdays and Saturdays. Now you're racing every day of the week. You race nights, you race Sundays. You can't be everywhere. You race in New South Wales, so you share the workload. You're always at work together, but you're not. It means I don't have to be at the races. Tomorrow at Bendigo, Ben will go. I'll be at home.
Right.
Where when you're the single trainer, you're expected to be at most race meetings.
Have you finally asked anything else you'd like to ask,
Well,
David?
can I just ask one more? Your
Yes,
routine during the week, up at what time?
Yeah, I'm at Euroa from Monday till Thursday.
Yes, and out of
except for
bed?
Cup Week, of course. It's a bit different because there was
Okay.
Breakfast of the Stars this morning. I wake up at on a Monday 3:30. I like to have a Sunday family day. On Sundays I don't set an alarm but get up at 6 in the morning to see how the Saturday runners. But every other day I wake up at 4. And
you retire at what time?
oh, pretty early. That's probably why I didn't see that show you were talking about. I go to bed, I have dinner, and go to sleep watching some, telly.
Just before we bid you farewell, you'll love this question. Are you allowed to bet on races?
Yes, jockeys can't, trainers can, because a jockey can influence the outcome of a race once the race starts,
Yes. Oh, no, I thought
and a
you were
trainer
gonna-
can't.
I thought you were going to say, don't be stupid. Of
Can
course
I
we
ask two
can't bet.
to finish? Are we
Yes.
finishing?
No, Don, if you have asked as many questions as you like.
The population's growing. You mentioned about John and I as ruckman. The bigger society's growing. Jockeys, why can't they lift the weights? Because I look at some of these jockeys, they look emancipated. That Jamie Mott looks like death warmed up.
And the emaciated.
Emaciated. Oh, sorry. He looks like death warmed up,
Doesn't
and
he
Craig
go
Williams is not far behind.
Yeah, Craig rides very light, but in the Melbourne Cup, to give you an idea, when you were playing football, the bottom weight had 46, and now the bottom weight will carry 51.5 or 52. So they have creeped up, and maybe they'll creep up a little bit more.
We were emancipated when we were playing dog dogs.
And the other thing is that Pakenham racecourse, the race on the dirt down there now, in the middle of winter, I see the horses come back, they look like trotters. How much of that stuff goes up into their nose, and how much is it a deterrent when you get caught behind
Like a kid
and
in
all
a
this
candy
spray,
shop.
and all that spray's coming back onto the horse?
When the all-weather track is correct, the dirt ends up on their shoulders predominantly. When that gets a little bit out of kilter, because they're modern tracks, the kickback gets too high. So if you're watching the race and the kickback's going higher than the horse, obviously it's hitting them in the head. Some horses shy and they resent it. Others get muck up their throat and give up. Others go through and push on. But they tinker with the track. So you have seen it, Dom, when the track's bad, because we all have, but they do get on top of it pretty quickly.
So what's the future of that track at Pakenham?
Oh, I think that'll be there's future for all-weather racing because the grass tracks get a rest and they're very consistent. And in winter, a horse that doesn't like the wet can win on all weather.
Now, have you noticed that the thoroughbred has changed over the years? Because we're looking for them, and they used to be really big, solid, decent types, like the national hunt horses in England. Now, do you train these thoroughbreds nowadays because they're ponies, as far as I'm concerned, in comparison to what they used to be?
Look, in the old days, it was very common that you would run on Moonee Valley Cup Day, Cox Plate Day. They said you couldn't win the Melbourne Cup if you didn't run this Saturday. And now I don't think barely, apart from the win you're in, they're more delicate. They're more the European staying bred. All these bringing the superior athletes in, the line of the horse are a more delicate horse than they were in the Star
So
Kingdom
it's
line.
incestuous? Are they inbred?
No, they're not inbred, but they're bred more. The class of breeding now is so much higher than it was in the early days when they were breeding a bigger, coarser colonial horse.
So you, I suspect, like a lot of punters will be hoping Constantinople can win the Cup.
So it would be irresponsible and remiss if we didn't ask him who's going to win.
Well, I thought I was halfway through that
Well,
question.
you said to me before we started, don't ask him that. That's just such an obvious
Sorry,
question.
David. So you've got the first part of it. Who do you rate as the biggest danger or dangers to your horses?
Probably the unknown, the ones that are in quarantine. We race in the Caulfield Cup. Danny O'Brien's horse ran a good race, Vow and Declare. Obviously, Chris Waller's Finch. But I just felt if my horse had a clear run, he would have beaten them. And that's why my horse is favourite. He's got a lightweight. So from the Caulfield Cup form, I'm really confident we can beat them. And then there's that query on these imports that are coming in. And you say they've never raced here, but you've seen the ones come out of quarantine, including Constantinople. They're flying out of the quarantine. So I think I'm very weary. I wish they weren't in the race. If you can organise something, Sammy, it may be a roadblock from Werribee, it would be good.
That's my territory. Cross counter won last year as a 3-year-old, didn't it?
Yeah, the reason I bought Constantinople was he had exactly very similar form lines to cross counter. So that was the stimulation to go and buy one with similar form, and I was lucky enough to get him.
Constantinople was the name of a formerly known as what?
It's an empire.
Istanbul.
British Empire.
No, not the British.
Istanbul.
Istanbul, you
Istanbul.
It was the Ottoman Empire, wasn't it?
The Ottoman.
You're the educated one here.
No, I'm not
David.
educated at the Ottoman, but I think it was the part of the Ottoman.
As someone once said, he was only the trainer's daughter, but all the horsemen knew her. So now, David, this has been enlightening. As I say, listening to Don, you're like a kid in a candy shop.
Yeah,
Don, it's great to see you've sparked up after near death last week, talking
Well,
horses.
I've come back to life because he was in. I've
I
made
know.
a real
That's-
effort.
Very excited when
That's
you
why
heard
we got
David
him
was
in.
coming.
It's
Yeah.
That was a good
cathartic
get.
for you to have him in here. And David, we really appreciate you coming in, mate. It's been fascinating to talk to you, and as I say, I've learned plenty about it because I knew nothing in the first place. So David Haynes has joined us.